For decades, Swiss banks built a powerful myth. They were the world's safe haven, a place where money was secure no matter what storms raged outside. This reputation was built on a foundation of absolute secrecy and unwavering neutrality. Switzerland stood apart from the conflicts of Europe. It was a stable island in a sea of chaos. Wealthy individuals, powerful corporations, even governments trusted their assets to the vaults hidden beneath the streets of Zurich, Geneva. This image was carefully crafted. The Swiss banking laws' numbered accounts promised complete anonymity to their clients. Your money was safe. Your identity was hidden. As the Nazi war machine rolled across Europe, it engaged in systematic plunder on an unimaginable scale. The national banks of conquered nations were emptied of their gold reserves. Belgium, the Netherlands, Austria. This vast treasure was funneled directly to Germany's Reichsbank. But the Nazis needed to convert this gold into hard currency, like Swiss francs, to buy essential war materials from neutral countries. This is where Switzerland became indispensable. Swiss banks, including the Swiss National Bank itself, became the primary destination for this flood of Nazi gold. They were the Reich's financial window to the rest of the world. The plunder was not limited to national treasuries. A far more sinister theft was taking place across the continent. Jewish families and other victims were systematically stripped of all their possessions before being sent to concentration and death camps. The problem for the Nazis and their Swiss banking partners was that much of the gold was identifiable. Gold bars stolen from the central banks of Belgium and other countries often carried the official stamp of their country of origin. Accepting these bars was a clear and undeniable sign of dealing in stolen goods. To solve this problem, a cynical and destructive process was put into motion. The Swiss banks, along with the German Reichsbank, began systematically melting down the looted gold bars. They wanted to erase any trace of their criminal origins and make them impossible to track back to the nations from which they were stolen. This process was a deliberate act of historical and criminal erasure. The original bars were cast into new molds, often stamped with pre-war dates to create a false history for the gold. This newly minted, laundered bullion was then presented as legitimate German-owned assets. The unique identifiers that tied the gold to its rightful owners were destroyed forever in the searing heat of the smelters. It was a calculated effort to sanitize the loot, transforming the spoils of war and genocide into clean, tradable commodities. The Swiss National Bank played a key role, accepting vast quantities of this recast gold without serious question. The same horrific logic was applied to the valuables stolen from Holocaust victims. The gold fillings pried from the teeth of murder victims, the melted-down wedding rings, the family jewelry. They were smelted together into indistinguishable bars, their individual stories of love, family, and life obliterated. This process was not just about hiding a financial crime, it was the final step in the dehumanization of the victims. Their last physical connections to their lives were dissolved into a mass of anonymous bullion. When World War II finally ended in 1945, a new battle began for Holocaust survivors and for the families of those who had perished. Many had deposited their life-savings family valuables in Swiss bank accounts before the war. When they tried to reclaim their assets, they were met with a wall of silence and obstruction. The same banks that had welcomed their deposits now treated claimants with suspicion and hostility, demanding proof that was, honestly, impossible to provide. The bank's demands were cruel and cynical. They asked for death certificates for relatives murdered in Auschwitz. They asked for death certificates for relatives murdered in Treblinka, documents the Nazi regime never issued. They required detailed account numbers and paperwork lost or destroyed in the chaos of war and persecution. For a survivor who had lost their entire family and possessions, producing such documentation was impossible. The bankers knew this. The bureaucratic hurdles were not an unfortunate side effect of procedure. By the 1990s, the patience of survivors and their descendants had run out. A new generation began to uncover the truth. Researchers, journalists, lawyers. Declassified Allied documents provided irrefutable proof of Swiss handling of Nazi gold. Whistleblowers brought the scandal into the light. Christoph Meili, the security guard who saved bank records from shredding, saved records and shredded paper imagery. The wall of silence that had stood for half a century began to crumble. The story erupted into a massive international scandal. Pressure mounted from all sides. Protests, courts, governments, World Jewish Congress. Edgar Bronfman launched a public campaign demanding justice. Class action lawsuits were filed in the United States on behalf of Holocaust victims and their families. Undersecretary Stuart Eisenstadt threatened sanctions. The bank's reputation was in tatters. They faced a moral and financial catastrophe. Faced with crippling legal and reputational damage, the banks were finally forced to the negotiating table. In 1998, they agreed to a landmark settlement of $1.25 billion. $1.25 billion?